Welcome, dear friend. Tonight, before you sleep, let yourself arrive here, right here, in this quiet moment, in the darkness that belongs only to you. Let the day that just passed begin to soften and recede. The conversations, the worries, the things left unfinished. You don't have to carry any of it into the night. Let it go, gently, one by one, like leaves carried off on a slow and patient river. Breathe in slowly, and let your breath out even slower. Feel the weight of your body settle where you are resting. Your shoulders, your hands, the back of your neck. Let the ground hold you. You don't have to hold yourself up anymore tonight. Tonight, we travel a very long way. We travel back to a time before cities, before maps, before the world as we know it, to the ancient land of Canaan, where the sun burned hot on dry soil, and where the stars at night were so many and so bright that the sky itself seemed to breathe. It was a world of wanderers, of people who moved with their tents and their flocks across a wide and unhurried land, carrying everything they needed on the backs of their camels. And in that ancient world, in the camp of a man named Abraham, somewhere in the hill country of Canaan, under an enormous and patient sky, lived a woman named Hagar. Hagar. Her name, in the old language, meant something like stranger, or wanderer, or she who is far from home. And in a way, all three were true of her. She had come from Egypt, a long, long way south. She was a servant in the household of Sarai, Abraham's wife, a woman of great faith and, in her own way, great sorrow. For Sarai had lived with a particular grief for many years. She had never had children. And in that ancient world, this was the kind of grief that entered every room, quietly, and stayed. So Hagar served. She carried water. She prepared food. She went where she was told to go. She was skilled and capable, and almost entirely invisible. The way servants were in those ancient days, doing the quiet, essential work of the world, while others receive the credit, while others are seen. Our story tonight begins here, with a woman who felt invisible, who had come from somewhere else, who was far from home, who served and waited and wondered if anyone knew she was there. You may know something of that feeling, that sense of doing so much and being so little seen. We will stay with Hagar tonight. We will not rush past her. We will walk very slowly through her story and let it rest gently alongside whatever you are carrying. Let your eyes grow heavy. The stars are out above ancient Canaan, and the story has just begun. The camp of Abraham was a remarkable place. It sat at the edge of the hill country of Canaan, on high ground where the wind came through and cooled the heat of the day. Great tents of dark goat hair stood in clusters. There were cooking fires in the evening, the smell of bread and roasting grain, the sound of animals settling for the night. A world complete in itself, with its own rhythms, its own customs, its own quiet understanding of how things were. Abraham was old, not in the tired way of someone who has run out of life, but in the deep way of someone who has lived so much that the living itself has made them almost luminous. He spoke slowly and listened even more slowly. He believed with everything in him in a God who had spoken to him and made him a promise that he would have a son, that from him would come a great people. Sarai believed too, but she also counted years, and she had counted enough of them to know that certain kinds of waiting have an ache at the center that doesn't soften with time. And so one day, with a particular desperation that comes from love and exhaustion and the slow death of a cherished hope, Sarai made a proposal. "Take Hagar," she said to Abraham. "Perhaps through her I shall have children." This was a custom of the ancient world, painful as it sounds to our ears. A servant could bear a child on behalf of her mistress. The child would belong to the household. It was a way of solving a problem with a living solution. But it was also a way of placing an enormous weight on the shoulders of someone who had no power to refuse. Hagar was not asked. Hagar was given. She was told what would happen. She was sent to Abraham's tent, and she did what she was required to do. And in time, she became pregnant. And something shifted in her. Perhaps it was the simple fact of new life moving inside her. Perhaps it was something she hadn't expected to feel. A quiet dignity. A sense that she was no longer entirely invisible. That she was carrying something no one else could carry. And perhaps, in the way that unexpected pride sometimes makes us less careful, she let some of that feeling show. The way she held her head, the way her eyes met Sarai's eyes, just slightly, for just a moment longer than they used to. And Sarai noticed. And Sarai was not glad. Rest here for a moment, in the still air of that ancient camp. The fire has burned low. The stars are out. And tomorrow, everything changes. What happened next moved quickly, the way these things do. Sarai went to Abraham. She was distressed. The word in the ancient text carries with it the feeling of something very wrong, of a pain so deep it had to come out somewhere. "This is your fault," she said. "I gave Hagar to you, and now she looks at me as if I am less than her. May God judge between you and me." Abraham, being the kind of man he was, wise enough to recognize a place he should not stand, said quietly, "Hagar is in your hands. Do as you think right." And what Sarai thought right in her pain was to make things very difficult for Hagar. We do not need to catalog exactly what Sarai did. The ancient text uses a word that means harsh treatment or affliction, the same word used later for the suffering of the Israelites in Egypt. It was not small, whatever it was. It was enough that Hagar, who was pregnant, chose to do the most dangerous thing a woman alone could do in that ancient world. She left. She walked out of the camp. She walked into the wilderness. She walked south, toward Egypt, toward the country she had come from, toward the only place she could imagine that was not this. And the wilderness was real, hot, dry, unshaded, the kind of place where a woman alone did not last long, the kind of place where the silence was so complete that it pressed in from all sides. Hagar walked until she found water, a spring, a small, miraculous gift in the dry landscape, exactly where it was needed. And she stopped there. She sat down beside it. There is something very human about this moment, when everything has become too much, when the option of staying has closed and the destination is unclear, when you find a small place to stop and just breathe. A spring in a desert, a park bench, a quiet corner, a moment in the dark before sleep, when the silence finally lets you exhale. Hagar was exhausted, alone, pregnant, and far from anything familiar. She had not chosen the path that led her here. She had been given away, told what to do, treated harshly, and now the only thing left was this spring of water and the empty desert stretching ahead. And then something happened. Someone found her. Someone came to her at the spring in the wilderness. The story says simply, the angel of the Lord found her. Found her. Not she found a way out. Not she kept walking and made it work. The angel of the Lord found her. Let that word be with you tonight. Found. The night is very still, and Hagar is not alone. At the spring of water in the wilderness of Shur, on the long road between Canaan and Egypt, where the ground was pale dust and the acacia trees grew low and thorny against the heat, the angel of the Lord sat beside a woman who thought she was entirely alone. The first thing the angel said was not a proclamation, not a sermon. It was the simplest kind of question you can ask someone. Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? And Hagar answered honestly. She said, I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai. She didn't dress it up. She didn't pretend. She said exactly what was true. She was running away from a household that had hurt her, from a situation she had not chosen and could not change. And the angel said something surprising. Not, you are safe now. Not, everything will be all right. The angel said, return to your mistress and submit to her. It is a hard word, a difficult word. Not the answer we might want to hear on behalf of Hagar. But the angel did not stop there, because the command to return came wrapped in something else entirely. A promise, a seeing, a turning toward Hagar that was the opposite of being invisible. I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude, the angel said. And then, behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. Ishmael. In the old language, God hears. The Lord has listened to your affliction. Hagar had not cried out in a way anyone could hear. She had simply run. She had found a spring and sat down. And yet, already, before she had spoken to anyone, before she had done anything to make herself heard, the Lord had listened, had already heard what she couldn't yet bring herself to say. And then came the words she spoke, the ones that have echoed through the rest of Scripture and never been taken back. You are the God who sees me. That was what Hagar said, not to the angel, but to God himself. She looked up in that desert place at the presence that had come to her, and she named it. She gave God a name that no one in all of Scripture is recorded as giving before her. El Roi, the God who sees me. Truly, here I have seen him who looks after me. She named the spring, too, Beer Lahai Roi, the well of the living one who sees me. Let that name rest in you for a moment. El Roi, the God who sees. You don't have to earn that kind of seeing. You only have to be there, to sit by your spring in the wilderness and let yourself be found. And Hagar returned. We don't know what that was like. The long walk back to the camp of Abraham. Whether she went slowly or quickly. Whether she felt peace or dread, or some complicated mixture of both. We don't know if she rehearsed what she would say, whether the heat and the dust and the tiredness were exactly the same as before, or whether something had changed in the quality of it. What we know is that she returned. She did the hard thing. Not because life in the camp would be easy. The text doesn't promise it would be. But because she had been seen. Because something had changed in her that made going back possible. There is something here about the way being genuinely seen can give us the strength to walk back into hard places. Not because the places have changed, but because we have. In time, Hagar gave birth to her son, and Abraham called him Ishmael, as the angel had said. Abraham was 86 years old, and the years went by. In the long, quiet rhythms of that ancient life, Ishmael grew. He was Abraham's firstborn. He ran in the fields, learned to tend the flocks, became strong and quick, and Abraham loved him. There is a quality to this passage of time that is worth resting in. The years after crisis, when life continues, when children grow and bread is baked, and the seasons turn, and the animals give birth, and the stars appear each night in their usual order, when the extraordinary thing that happened becomes part of the fabric of ordinary life. Hagar was still a servant. Sarai's grief had not dissolved. The complications of their shared household had not resolved themselves into neatness. But time was passing, and time has a kind of mercy in it, the mercy of continuation, of one day following another, of morning after morning. And then, when Abraham was 99 years old, when Ishmael was 13, God spoke again. God changed their names. Abram became Abraham, Sarai became Sarah, and God renewed the promise. Within a year, Sarah would have a son. Sarah, when she heard this, laughed. Not the laughter of joy, not yet. The laughter of someone who has waited so long that the announcement of what they've been waiting for strikes them as somehow impossible. She laughed to herself, quietly. But a year later, Isaac was born, and something in the household of Abraham shifted again. Rest here a moment. The air is warm, the fire is low, and the night is very quiet. The day that changed everything again came quietly, the way such days sometimes do. Isaac had been weaned, a celebration in that ancient world, a moment that marked a child's arrival into proper life in the household. Abraham made a great feast, and at the feast Sarah saw Ishmael. The text says she saw him laughing or playing. Whatever she saw, something crystallized in her heart. A fear she had been carrying for a long time, a decision she had been approaching without quite making. She went to Abraham and she said, "Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac." These are hard words to read. Sarah, who had also suffered. Sarah, who had also waited and hoped and despaired and finally rejoiced. Sarah now asked for the expulsion of a woman and a boy who had lived in their camp for more than 13 years. It is one of the truths about human beings that our own suffering does not always make us more compassionate toward the suffering of others. Sometimes the wound we carry makes us tight and fearful, and certain that safety requires a kind of exclusion. Sarah was afraid for her son, and fear, when it is strong enough, can crowd out almost everything else. Abraham was distressed by this. The ancient text says so clearly. Ishmael was his son. He had loved him for 13 years. But God spoke to Abraham, "Do not be distressed because of the boy and your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will also make a nation of the son of the slave woman, because he is your offspring." And so Abraham rose early in the morning. He took bread and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He placed them on her shoulder. He gave her the child, and he sent her away. He rose early, before the heat, before the camp was fully awake, perhaps before he could change his mind. Hagar went out, with the bread, with the water, with Ishmael at her side, back into the wilderness, this time not fleeing, this time sent, without choosing, without a destination, without more than a skin of water in a desert that went on and on. The text doesn't tell us if they said goodbye, if Ishmael looked back, if Abraham did. It only says she went into the wilderness of Beersheba. She went. The stars are beginning to appear above the desert, and Hagar and her son are walking. In the wilderness of Beersheba, where the terrain was rocky and pale, and the sun by midday turned the ground into something almost indistinguishable from fire, Hagar and Ishmael walked. The bread was eaten, the water was gone. We don't know how many days they had been walking. What we know is that the water ran out. In a desert, when water runs out, there is not much time. Ishmael, who had grown strong and quick, who had learned to read the sky and tend the animals, Ishmael collapsed. And Hagar did something that any parent who has ever watched a child suffer will understand in the deepest possible way. She couldn't watch. She put him down. She put him under a bush, a small acacia, sparse and thorny, but providing just a trace of shade in the merciless heat. She placed him there as gently as she could, and then she walked away. Not far, about a bowshot's distance, the text says. Close enough to come back, far enough that she couldn't see his face. And she sat down, and she wept. "Let me not look on the death of the child," she said. These are perhaps the most heartbreaking words in Hagar's story. Not in anger, not in accusation, just the simple, devastating truth of a mother who has done everything she could, who has gone as far as she can go, who has nothing left to give, and who cannot bear to watch what comes next. Let me not look on the death of the child. There is a kind of grief that has no words left, that has moved past protest, past prayer, past even tears, into something that is simply presence in the face of the unbearable. Hagar was there. Sitting on the desert ground, her back turned toward her son, weeping without hope of rescue. If you have ever been in a place like that, where the options have closed, where the resources have run out, where what you most feared seems to be arriving, whether you are ready for it or not, then you know something of where Hagar sat. You are not alone in that knowing, and the story is not over yet. The sun was very hot, the desert was very quiet, and Hagar wept. And then, the text says this so gently, so simply, God heard the voice of the boy. God heard the voice of the boy. Ishmael had not spoken as far as we know. There are no words recorded for him. He had been laid under the bush, and he was fading. But something was being heard, a sound below the threshold of human hearing, a sound that doesn't require words, that is made simply by being alive and in pain and needing. The angel of God called to Hagar from heaven. And what did the angel say? The same kind of question as before. Not an announcement, not a proclamation. A question. What is wrong, Hagar? What is wrong? As if the one asking already knew, and was asking not for information, but for connection. As if the asking itself was a way of reaching toward her, of saying, I see you. I am here. Tell me. Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Where he is. Not when he gets somewhere better. Not once things improve. Where he is. In the heat, under the bush, at the edge of everything. Right there. God heard him right there. Lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. And then, in one of those moments in Scripture that feels like the whole story pivoting on a single sentence, something happened to Hagar's eyes. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. It was there. The well was there. It had been there all along, and her eyes had been so full of grief, her body so spent, her hope so exhausted, that she had not been able to see it. God did not create a new well in that moment, or perhaps he did, The text doesn't specify. What it says is that her eyes were opened, that what was needed was already present, that seeing was the gift. She went to the well. She filled the skin with water. She went to her son and gave him water to drink. And he lived. He lived. Just those 2 words. He lived. The simplest words, carrying more weight than almost anything else that could be said. Rest in that for a moment. Whatever you thought was beyond reach tonight, whatever felt like the water had run out, there is a well somewhere, and eyes that can open, and the sound of your need is already heard, right where you are. They rested by the well. We can imagine it, even if the text doesn't describe it. The long, slow recovery of a body that has been brought back from the edge. The water, drunk slowly, given in small amounts. The shade sought out. The gradual return of color, of breath, of stillness that is rest rather than danger. And the night came over the wilderness of Beersheba, and the stars appeared. The same stars that had always been there above that desert, patient and numberless, ancient beyond memory. And Hagar lay down beside her son in the darkness and breathed. Just breathed. There are moments after crisis, after the thing you feared most has passed, or changed direction, or not arrived the way you expected, when the body simply needs to be still, when the mind, which had been so tightly wound around the problem, can begin to loosen, when the first real sleep in a long time becomes possible. This is one of those moments. For Hagar, and perhaps for you tonight too, the wilderness of Beersheba, where it had looked like the end, became instead a turning point. A well was found. A child was spared. A promise was repeated. And the long arc of God's attention, which had never, not once, looked away from this woman who had been given away and sent away and overlooked and twice met in the wilderness. That long arc continued. The text tells us simply what happened next. God was with the boy, and he grew up. God was with the boy. He grew. He lived in the wilderness of Paran. He became an archer, strong, skilled, able to provide for himself. His mother found him a wife from the land of Egypt, her own country, the country she had come from so long ago. And Ishmael lived, not as an afterthought, not as a lesser story beside a greater one. He lived with his own children and his own territory, and his own long, remarkable story that the Bible traces carefully, because God had promised to attend to it. And Hagar, who had been called stranger, wanderer, she who is far from home, Hagar had named God. She had done something no one in the Bible is recorded as doing before her. She had looked at the presence that had come to her and named it, El Roi, the God who sees me. She saw him, and she knew she was seen. And that knowing was enough to carry her through the long, difficult, beautiful, ordinary days that followed. The stars are very bright tonight over the wilderness of Beersheba, and Hagar is resting. And so can you. Beneath the vast, unhurried sky of ancient Canaan, where a woman named Hagar had twice been found in the wilderness and twice been given a reason to continue, the story reaches the quieter territory of its meaning. We have walked a long way tonight. We have walked with a woman who was invisible and then seen, who was sent away and then found, who sat at the edge of the unbearable and heard her name called anyway. There is a particular quality of suffering that Hagar's story holds. It is the suffering of the overlooked, the person in the household who does the work but doesn't receive the recognition, the person whose pain is acknowledged as real but allowed to continue because it's more convenient for others if it does. Hagar was not the enemy of this story. She was a woman in an impossible position, doing the only thing she could do, and finding that God noticed. El Roi, the God who sees. One of the things that makes this name so remarkable is that Hagar gave it. This woman, an Egyptian, a servant, a person with no status in the hierarchies of that ancient world, she is the only person in all of Scripture to give God a new name. Everyone else receives one. She gives one. In naming him, she asserted something, that she had seen him too, that the seeing went both ways, that she was not merely an object of divine attention, but a subject who could look back, who could say, "You saw me, and I saw you, and I am naming what I found here." And the place was named too, Beer Lahai Roi, the well of the living one who sees me. A real place, a place that other people found and drank from for generations after, a place whose name carried her experience in it long after Hagar herself had lived and died. Something about her knowing was written into the landscape, made permanent in a way that outlasted her body, outlasted the crisis, outlasted the years. What does it mean to be seen by God? It doesn't mean that the difficult things are immediately removed. Hagar was told to go back to Sarai. She was later sent into the wilderness again. Being seen did not mean being exempt from the hard things, but it meant she was never alone in them. It meant that what she suffered was witnessed, that the one who could see everything was watching and attending, and had not forgotten her name. And that, the story seems to suggest, can be enough to keep going. El Roi. There's something in this phrase that I want to stay with for a moment, here in the quiet of your night. Because Hagar's story is, in one sense, very specific. A woman in the ancient Bronze Age world, in a desert, in a crisis that is hard to fully imagine from our distance. But in another sense, it is astonishingly close to where many of us find ourselves, in the dark. The feeling of not being seen, of doing work that is essential and unnoticed, of suffering that others know about but allow to continue, of running, not always into a literal desert, but running to some internal place where the noise is less and the loneliness is at least your own, and finding there, in the internal wilderness, something that feels like presence. "What is wrong?" the angel asked Hagar. Both times, once when she fled, once when she wept, There was a turning toward her, a naming of her, a speaking to her specifically, precisely, as this woman, in this place, in this moment. Not to the idea of her, not to the category of suffering woman in a desert. To Hagar, by name. You have a name too. Whatever you are carrying into the dark tonight, whatever has made today heavy or confusing or lonely, you are not carrying it unobserved. The old word for what God was doing with Hagar is the Hebrew word ra'ah, to see. It means not just visual perception, but attentive knowing, being fully seen, being understood, having all of your reality received by someone who is capable of holding it without being diminished by it. El Roy is the God who sees you, not the version of you that got things right today, not the composed version, the Hagar version, sitting by the spring, having fled from something, not entirely sure what comes next. That version of you is seen. And there is a well. Maybe not the kind you can drink from. Maybe not the kind you can point to on a map. But a resource somewhere inside the grief and the exhaustion and the bewilderment that is already present, already there, waiting for ours to open enough to find it. God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Let that be a kind of prayer tonight as you move toward sleep. Open my eyes. Let me see what is already here. Let me find the water I didn't know was within reach. The wilderness is quieter now, and Hagar's story has been carrying yours very gently through the night. There is one more thread in Hagar's story that wants to be followed before we rest. Many years after the events we have walked through tonight, after Hagar and Ishmael had survived the wilderness of Beersheba, after Ishmael had grown up and built a life in the wilderness of Paran, Abraham died. He was 175 years old, and at his burial, at the cave in the field of Machpelah, Ishmael was there. He came to bury his father alongside Isaac. The two brothers stood at their father's grave together, the son of Sarah and the son of Hagar, side by side. We don't know what was said between them. We only know they were both there, that they both came, that the grave was a place where the distances between people sometimes collapse into something simpler. Ishmael lived to be 137 years old. He had 12 sons who became the ancestors of 12 nations. He was, as God had promised at the spring in the wilderness of Shur, promised to Hagar before Ishmael was born, when she was pregnant and frightened and alone. That promise was kept. Every single word of it was kept. This is the kind of detail that is easy to miss in the middle of the crisis. When you are sitting at the edge of your version of the wilderness and the water has run out, and you cannot look at what seems to be ending, in that moment, the long view is not available. You only know where you are. And what the story of Hagar says from the other side of all of it is, the promises were kept. The child survived. The nations came into being. The well was real. The seeing was real. All of it was real. Whatever promise has been spoken over your life, over the life of someone you love, the story is not at the bush in the desert. It is not over at the hardest chapter. It goes on. It goes on in ways you cannot yet see. Let that be the last thought before sleep carries you further in. The stars are still out above the wilderness. The well is full, and everything is held. Under the ancient stars of Canaan, where the desert meets the hill country, and the night air carries both the warmth of the day and the first cool touch of evening, let us gather together everything we have held tonight, very gently, before the story releases us to sleep. We have walked with Hagar from the camp of Abraham, where she was invisible, to the spring in the wilderness, where she was seen. We have walked with her through years of ordinary life, through the sudden crisis of expulsion, into the wilderness of Beersheba, where the water ran out. And we have watched God open her eyes. What remains with us from all of that is something that doesn't need many words. El Roi, the God who sees. Not the God who sees and immediately fixes. Not the God who removes all difficulty before it arrives, but the God who sees, who notices, who attends, who watches and knows and does not look away, who comes to the spring when you think you are alone, who asks, "What is wrong?" who says, "Fear not," who opens eyes to what was already there. There is a question that Hagar's story leaves in the air, very gently. Have you looked upon him who looks after you? The text asks this at the spring in the wilderness of Shur, in the moment after Hagar has named God, after she has said, "You are the God who sees me." The question is about the looking, not just being seen, but seeing in return. And I wonder if, tonight, in this quiet, in the darkness of your room, in the last soft moments before sleep, you might let yourself believe that you are being looked at. Right now. Not examined, not judged, looked at with the kind of attention that is simply care. That the one who counted the stars of the sky also knows your name, and has followed you through whatever wilderness this year has held. Not from a distance, not looking away at more important things, but here, attending, the way the angel was attending at the spring, the way the voice called from heaven in Beersheba, the way presence arrived, quietly and specifically, when Hagar was in the place where she most needed it. You don't have to be in a wilderness to receive that kind of attention. You are receiving it right now. In the ordinary darkness of an ordinary night, El Roi is watching, the living one who sees you. And you are not alone. Let your body grow heavier now. Let your breathing slow just a little more. In and out. In and out. You don't have to do anything with the breath. You don't have to breathe in a particular way or achieve a particular feeling. Just let the breath come and go, the way it always does, the way it has been doing all your life, faithfully, without your having to think about it. The body knows how to rest. You don't have to teach it. You only have to let it. Hagar's story is a story about being seen in the wilderness, but it is also a story about water, about something essential that was needed, that seemed absent, that was then found. There is something about the image of a well in the desert that has spoken to people across thousands of years of different lives and different difficulties. The thing you most need, discovered right where you are. The resource that was present even when you couldn't see it. The gift that arrived not by your finding it, but by your eyes being opened to what was already there. What is your well tonight? What might be already present that you haven't been able to see? Not a problem to be solved right now, just a gentle wondering to take into the dark with you. Maybe it is rest itself, the deep repair that happens when we surrender the wakefulness and let the night do what it knows how to do. All of that without your effort, already happening, already present, a well you are about to drink from, simply by closing your eyes. Let yourself be given the gift of sleep tonight. Not earned, not achieved, given, the way the water was given at the spring, the way the well was opened in the wilderness, the way presence arrived when Hagar had run out of everything else. Let it be given. Let it come. You have done enough today. You have carried what you have carried. And now the night, which has always known what to do with tired people, is here, ready to hold you, ready to give you back to yourself in the morning, rested and a little more whole. Close your eyes if they are not already closed. Let the dark be soft. Let it be a well. Let it give you what you need. You are seen. You are held. You can let go. The fire has burned very low now, only a few coals still glowing in the darkness. Orange and amber and very still. A small warmth in a wide night. The ancient camp is quiet. The tents are dark. The animals have settled. The stars are moving, slowly, imperceptibly, in their enormous, patient arcs above the hills of Canaan. The same stars that watched over Abraham and Sarah. The same stars that lit the path for Hagar, walking south toward Egypt. The same stars that burned above the wilderness of Beersheba, above the acacia bush, above a mother sitting on the ground with her face turned away. They are still there. The stars don't rush. They have time. They always have time. And they keep their watch, whether we are aware of them or not, whether we are sleeping or waking, whether we are in crisis or in ordinary days. They keep their watch. There is a kind of comfort in that, in the continuity of the things that are older than our trouble. The stars, the seasons, the pattern of day following night following day, the way spring comes after winter every year without exception, the way the body, given rest, almost always begins to mend, the way grief, given real time, finds its way into a shape that can be lived with. Tonight, you are held inside all of that continuity, inside the long, patient rhythm of a world that has held people through harder things than this and gentler things than this for a very long time. And inside the attention of the God that Hagar named, El Roy, who sees the stars and knows their number, who sees the desert and knows every spring hidden within it, who sees the sleeping body and the moving dream and the deep internal life that continues even when consciousness has dimmed, who sees you, not in general, specifically, you in this room, in this dark, with whatever you brought with you into the night. Seen, not judged, not assessed, not waiting for you to do better or be different, just seen as you are, right now, as completely as Hagar was seen at the spring when she was pregnant and frightened and far from home. That completely. Let that be the last thing you carry into sleep. That you are seen. That the well is there. That morning comes. The night is very quiet now, and you have everything you need. The night deepens now. The last trace of blue at the edge of the sky has dissolved, and what remains is the deep, full dark. The kind of darkness that the ancient world knew better than we do, soft and total, and somehow companionable. In all that dark, there are stars. They were always there, of course, even before the dark was dark enough to show them. The way certain truths are always present, but can only be seen when the noise has quieted enough, when the busyness has stilled, when the light has dimmed. And there they are, quietly there, as they have always been. El Roy, the God who sees me. The name Hagar gave to the spring and to the presence she had found there. A name that is not a complicated name, not a philosophical claim or a theological argument, just the simple testimony of experience. I was in the wilderness, and I was seen, and the one who saw me was God. If Hagar's story has given you anything tonight, I hope it has given you this: permission to be exactly where you are, not somewhere better, not somewhere more composed, right here in whatever your version of the wilderness is, and to believe that exactly here is a place that is seen, not overlooked, not too ordinary, not too broken or too far from anything recognizable. Seen. You do not have to perform okayness to be seen. You do not have to arrive at a spring, at some better place, before the presence becomes available. The angel found Hagar at the spring, but the spring was in the desert. The spring was already in the wilderness. The finding happened right there, in the uncomfortable and the difficult and the far from anywhere. And the well in the wilderness of Beersheba, the well that appeared when her eyes were opened. That well was there before her eyes were opened. The seeing was the gift, yes, but the well itself had already been placed. Whatever you need tonight has already been placed. The rest, the peace, the resource you don't know how to name, it is already there, right where you are, and eyes can be opened. But tonight, you don't have to find it. Tonight, you only have to rest and let it find you. The thoughts that were moving when you began tonight have grown quieter now. This is the nature of the night. It has a way, if we let it, of softening things, of taking the sharp edges off the thoughts that seemed so urgent at the end of the day. Not because the thoughts are wrong or the concerns don't matter, but because the mind, like the body, needs rest. And rest requires a loosening of the grip. Hagar loosened her grip when she ran. She let go of the pretense that she could manage what was happening to her. She left. And in the leaving, in the running, she found something she would not have found if she had stayed. And then, years later, she loosened her grip again, when she could not carry her son any further, when she laid him under the bush and walked away, when she sat down in the sand and wept. She let go of control. She let go of the story she was trying to hold together. And in that total surrender of the last thing she was still trying to manage, something opened. God heard. God called. Her eyes were opened. The well was there. There is something about releasing the last grip that allows a different kind of seeing to begin. We cannot force that moment. It comes when it comes. But it comes. And tonight, you don't have to be in crisis for it to come. The gentler version of that releasing is simply this: sleep, letting go of the day, loosening the grip on the thoughts and the plans and the concerns just for these hours, trusting that they will still be there in the morning if they need to be, and trusting that the rest you take tonight is not an abandonment of them, but a resource for them. So let yourself go now. Let the thoughts drift off. Let the sounds around you become background. Let your breathing be the only thing that's important for these next few minutes. In and out, slow and steady and easy. In and out. The wilderness is very still, and the well is very close, and the stars are watching. There is one last image I want to leave with you tonight. It is the image of a spring. Not a grand one, not a rushing river, just a small, still spring in the desert of Shur, where the water came up from somewhere deep in the earth, reliable and clean and life-giving, regardless of what was happening on the surface, regardless of the heat, regardless of the distance from anywhere. It just came up, quietly, faithfully, there. Hagar named it Beer Lahai Roy, the well of the living one who sees me. And in the ancient world, when you named a place, you were doing something more than labeling it. You were claiming what had happened there. You were saying, "This is real. This occurred. This water and this presence and this seeing, they happened here, in this place, and I am putting my name on it so that no one forgets." Something happened for Hagar, something real, in a real desert, at a real spring, to a real woman who was really seen. And something has happened for you tonight, in some small way. You have rested here. You have let the story of a woman who was invisible and then seen carry you for an hour through the dark. You have breathed slowly. Your body has let go of some of what it was holding. Whether you are nearly asleep or still somewhere at the edge, it doesn't matter. The night has you. The same darkness that held Hagar beside the spring is holding you now. Patient and dark and full of stars. And the same attending presence, the one she named, the one that could not be kept from finding her. That presence is here too. Not going anywhere, not looking away. If you carried something heavy into this night, a fear, a grief, a question without an answer, something that hasn't finished with you yet, you don't have to carry it all the way to morning. You can leave it here for a while, at the spring, in the desert, under the enormous, patient, seeing sky, and sleep. Let the living one who sees take the watch. Let the stars do their slow, faithful arc. Let the night give you back to yourself in the morning, a little lighter, a little rested, a little more able to see whatever well is waiting to be found. You have walked a long way tonight, and you are not alone. You have never been alone. Sleep well. You are not walking alone. Good night from Calm Night.